So it is focused on the care. Is that on purpose? And then what do you do? Do you have to zoom out? Do you flip to sometimes you do the whole room.
Should I modify?
Well, I'm thinking that
Yeah.
I'm thinking that
Okay, so I suppose my advice is use that and then almost zoom in and then switch.
reasons why we might
So you're not seeing because then that stops.
I didn't really change the wording that you gave me too much, right? But now, okay,
Probably better to hope if someone stops speaking, go back to the main room and then find them.
the next consideration is to ask quietness. So maybe we could add in another caveat here. It's more social, complex reasons. As an example, or
the fact that we don't have traditional mailing
Hey, how's it going?
I'm alright, how are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Not too bad at all. Nice to get back to the routine of all of these things after.
yes, okay, yes.
That's right, we're now past the miserable part of January where everyone comes back and nobody wants to be at work.
It's also that it's like the sun today was beautiful and the days are just getting slightly longer. So it's a nice time of year.
Yes.
It's all good. And you're answering some questions. We've got local
Yes, I
list
know exactly.
questions coming up.
Yeah, I haven't flipped.
Which I think I've seen the feedback. But the other question I think is can we add things to the list? And I think the answer is
The answer is
not really.
no. The answer is no, but polite.
Yes.
So I have a form of words that says it. No, I'm quite relaxed about that one. It's if it gets a bit complicated on the solar panel one.
Depends on where they are.
I'm not
Fine.
in deep with the project.
And in some ways, I mean, Nick's here, but I think that one it's such a no-brainer. There's not a lot to ask about.
I think so. Should be fine.
Very good.
Is that DMs or I'm imagining something?
Yeah, so
That's cool.
Yeah, so that is
Right. Like Mr. Bean getting his things organised. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to those in the chamber and those online, members online, and any members of the public joining us to the January executive meeting. So without further ado, we'll have a look at the agenda. So apologies for absence. What do you have?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Rise.
Councillor Rise. Okay, good. I've got two small ones. Councillor Thompson will be joining us shortly, stuck in traffic, probably related to the traffic lights down the road, and David Omani as well. So he'll be joining shortly as soon as he can. Any others for anybody? No? Okay, good. Minutes of the previous meeting, item 2. Everybody okay with the minutes of the previous meeting? Anybody want to raise anything? Going to have to keep craning my neck today, I see. Thank you for that. Good. Okay. Minutes are good to go then. Declarations of interest is item 3. Any declarations from anybody? Yes, please, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. Just that I'm a trustee of the Surrey Heath Age Concern.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Any other declaration? I'm sorry, say that again. Councillor Rowlands, please.
Executive member of the Job Club.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Any more? Councillor Wheeler, thank you, Councillor Ashby, pointing that out.
Thank you. Just I'm not actually sure what the declaration here is here, but my property is one of the properties that is locally listed for one of the later agenda items.
Yeah, that's like consulting with yourself about a consultation.
Sorry, it is, and it is also really difficult to hear people. I've got my volume right up, and the sound is not great.
Okay, great. Well, we'll let the back office team have a look at that. Councillor Wheeler, thanks for raising. Certainly, if all members, including myself, can speak up, I'm sure that will help. Good. Just 2 quick ones from me. Is that okay, Eddie? Or okay, I'll wait. We'll just pause for a moment. Who's on minutes? Is Eddie on minutes? Is he?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we try that? Councillor Wheeler.
Is that better, Councillor Wheeler, or anybody else online?
No.
No. We need a preamp.
Oh, Valerie's saying yes.
Oh, Valerie thinks, sorry, Councillor White says yes.
Well,
That's,
Fine by me.
Is that better?
I've got good sound.
Very good. Thanks, Councillor Tedder. We'll have to get you a Getter Blaster, Councillor Wheeler. So 2 declarations of interest from myself. One is, as a family, we're a monthly contributor to the Hope Hub. And the second one is, within the last 3 months, my son has had some support from the Camberley Job Club, but there is no ongoing relationship. Okay. Public question time. As far as I'm aware, we don't have any questions from the public. Okay, welcome, Councillor Thompson. In that case, we'll move on to item 5, questions by members around executive functions. Councillor Wilson was up first, was he? Thanks. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you. A question for the portfolio holder on play parks. The Albert Road play park in Bagshot is scheduled to be refurbished and the public consultation recently closed. I wondered if there was any update or progress report on how the refurbishment project's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Rowlands, would you mind just pressing your button for a second until we'll come back to you in a minute? Thank you. Councillor Skipper, are you able to give an update on that point, please?
Yes, I am. The order was placed for Vixted and the winning design was chosen. They're waiting for an indicative start date, and they have confirmed that the playground will be completed by the end of March.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor Skipper. I think Councillor Rowlands was next, yeah?
Yes, bearing in mind the continued problem of illegal parking at the top of Frimley Road, which nothing seems to have happened. This is a plea possibly for the council to consider taking back parking as a responsibility, because there are quite a few examples of the county not actually effectively carrying out their role as far as parking is concerned. And I wonder if this could be put on the agenda as a possibility.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Ashbury?
Parking and parking enforcement is not an activity of this council, but it is of Surrey County Council. I would encourage everyone to report issues to Surrey County Council where they have them. I will add the concern to my list of concerns for discussions the next time we hold meetings with Surrey County Council where we talk about it. I don't believe that the county will be amenable to any discussion with us about us taking over parking enforcement, as they have responsibility for highways across the whole of Surrey. I will certainly bring that particular issue up with them next time I have a meeting with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owens. Councillor Ashbury, could you just confirm you had a number of interactions with, I think, with the transport portfolio head at Surrey County Council. Have they actually agreed to a meeting yet or around these lists of issues, or is this list just getting longer and longer?
The list is getting longer and longer. There was a productive meeting between officers of this council and officers of Surrey County Council. I am yet to succeed in nailing down a meeting with the Cabinet Member for Transport at Surrey County Council. I contacted him again earlier this week to try to set up a date.
Thanks very much. I just thought that additional context might be helpful, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Thompson, unless there was anybody else? Councillor White was first online. Sorry, Councillor Thompson. Councillor White, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Sorry, perfectly. Thank you, Councillor White.
Okay, thank you. In the meeting, the full council meeting in December, I was surprised to hear the Mayor announce that she would not be having a civic service in her mayoral year. I was quite surprised at this, and I've been led to believe, or it's been hinted, that this was something to do with this administration. Could I have a confirmation of that? And if that is the case, why are we not having a civic service for this mayoral year?
Thank you, Councillor White. So we updated Councillor Tedder over a number of months about our position on the civic service. I'm happy to dig out the relevant correspondence and forward it to you within the normal timescales to answer your question. Thank you, Councillor White. Sorry, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. This is a question for the portfolio holder for sustainable transport and planning. And it relates to the fateful bridge between Lightwater and Bagshot. As we all know, that bridge was removed in December. Unfortunately, the disruption was not as bad as first thought, and I think a lot of credit needs to go to all the relevant authorities on the communication that would that helped to achieve that. So with the safety aspect now resolved, sort of thoughts turn to the new bridge and when that might be erected. I know originally there was a timescale of 2 years mooted at the time when the bridge was first closed. Are you able to give us an update on where we are in terms of timescales and when we might start to see some spades in the ground, if you like, in terms of that new bridge? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Ashbury?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We actually held a progress meeting last week with National Highways and Surrey County Council. As you said, the bridge demolition occurred exactly as planned over the weekend of the 18th to the 11th, the 8th to the 11th of December. And actually the M3 reopened several hours earlier than was originally planned. There is a small concrete section remaining on the Bagshot side of the motorway, and there are plans to get some equipment in there between now and the end of January to remove that. Funding has been agreed for replacement bridge. A principal contractor has already been appointed, and geotechnical surveys are currently underway. So there are already spades in the ground working for the replacement bridge. By parallel pathing some of the survey work and the build work at the request of both us and Surrey County Council, the original project plan has been shortened by 6 months, and the current proposal is that the bridge will reopen in May 2025. We've scheduled in a number of further meetings with National Highways, the next of which will be in April, so I can give another update following that meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ashbury. I think Councillor Kang.
Thank you, Chair. A Bisley and Western resident, Mr. Edmund Baines, is in his capacity a chairman, West Chobham Resident Association chairman. Friends of Chobham wanted to ask a public question, which unfortunately was not deemed in scope for tonight's meeting. However, it covers an executive function, and therefore I would like to ask it on his behalf. Consensus of the worry and concerns of my Liz Noble and Ying Parrot residents have from flooding issues. Particularly recently, every time we have a significant downpour. Can the leader explain why it is that earmarked funds acquired in part of the residents in his role as a chairman of the local residents association and duly approved by the executive of the council to improve flood protection and alleviation measures in Pennypot be arbitrarily withdrawn? Can you please? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kang. I don't know whether Councillor Ashbury or one of the officers is going to address this.
Mr. Chinnan is going to cover.
Mr. Chinner, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Kang, for your question. So in short, there is a project which has been set up for Pennypot Lane, and there's been an allocation of money up to £6,000, which has been earmarked for this work. It was scheduled for commencement of these works in 2020 and 2021, and then there was an incursion on the piece of land by travellers. And also there was we had COVID as well. Since then, COVID has relaxed and works has commenced on the site in 2022 and 23. There's been watercourse clearance and a commencement of the roadside works as well. And this has cost up to £7,000 to actually undertake. Since then, where the watercourse is bypassing on the land, this has changed. This is partially due to the land ownership issues, which is a key location of where these works will take place. And also, this means that there will need to be a re-evaluation of the project work, but also environmental agency wants to improve these works going through the site as well. And our lead drainage engineer is in a communication and consultation with EA about these works. So once these works have become much clearer and a set project comes much clearer as well, those works will recommence. In terms of the funding is still in place for these works, and also if EA do get involved in the project, which is highly likely, the funding will improve and will increase. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kang. Mr. Chinner, do we have any time frame around how we expect that to progress?
No time frame as such, but it's an ongoing piece of work which we're doing at the moment. So once I know more, I can report back to the executive.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Cope, please.
Thank you, Leader. My question relates to a post made by Surrey Heath Liberal Democrats on the 14th of December, referenced the Audit Standards and Risk meeting that both the Leader and myself were in attendance. The post read, Finance Director of Surrey Heath Council repeatedly refuses to release draft financial statements for financial year 2021, 21-22 and 22-23 to councillor members of the Audit and Standards Committee, staggering and totally unacceptable. Does the Leader agree with me that that is quite an inaccurate summary of what happened at that meeting? And is it appropriate for official channels of the party running this administration to make accusations like that about officers?
Thank you, Councillor Cope. I think factually the statements were correct, that the officer refused to publish the accounts. So I don't think there's any concerns around that. What was said was factually okay. Statistically, if you look, Surrey Heath is a laggard in terms of reporting its accounts. We are certainly not best in class in that regard. Some of it may come through the complexity of the property deals done by the previous Conservative administration, but we don't have clarity on that yet. I think all of the members in the chamber and beyond would very much like to see those accounts published. And I'm sure the Section 151 officer is working extremely hard to make sure that that happens in the most expedient way. Thank you. Councillor Omani, please. Thank you, Councillor Omani. Councillor McIntyre, are you okay to comment on this, or would you like me to? Thank you very much. So we've engaged in the normal consultation process. Associated with all these provisional settlements, there is a consultation process that's allowed, and we've completed that formally. We've also taken the opportunity to write directly to the relevant Secretary of State, which of course is our MP, to highlight our concerns about being fourth last per household in the country in terms of the funding settlement, because we are not the fourth wealthiest in the country, so there seems to be some illogic going on there. We also continue to be concerned about how much business rates we are able to retain, which is forecast to be 5%. So those are the things we have done so far. We await, with due anticipation, but probably not an awful lot of hope, the final settlement. And then we can see what further representations we can make. But yeah, it's not a great settlement for not just ourselves, but for a number of other councils in the district councils in the area. Thank you for your question. Thank you. Further council. Councillor Thorne, I think you were next. I've overruled.
Thank you, Leader. Last month, a number of us were fortunate to work quite closely with Surrey Heath Beat Police on a local burglary initiative, awareness initiative across the borough in our wards. And I was interested to learn that for a lot of the officers who work in Surrey Heath, they're unable, obviously, there's not much parking here at Surrey Heath House to enable them to be able to park here, so a lot find their parking across Camberley in places where there's free parking. At shifts which might finish at 4 a.m. in the morning and then have to walk back potentially a mile or so to their car, depending on when their shift started. Is there anything this council could do to potentially provide some sort of parking for these officers, whether it be in one of our car parks, either on a permitted agreement when they're on shift, going forward? Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for raising the anti-burglary campaign. I think it was a very valuable exercise. Some of the messages that I learnt in the pre-briefing, I was actually able to update a worried resident on the doors today. Obviously without putting any fear into her, but just making sure she was aware of the simple, practical things that could be done. So very much hope that other members will be able to find the time in their wards to support it. In terms of your question, great question. Thank you very much. We'll take that away and look at it and see what we can do. I think we're all aware of the service that the police give us and other members of the emergency services, and we need to try and make their lives as easy as possible. So thank you very much, Councillor Thorne, for that question. Councillor Wilson, I believe, was next, according to the 360 eyes that Mr. Roberts has. Please, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Recently, the council's new portable air quality monitor was deployed in Windlesham for about 4 weeks, and there was a huge amount of interest from residents and appreciation that it was there. So I wanted to say, can I thank the scientific officer and the team for all the work that they did on that and for clearly explaining the science to us all as well. Is there any, or can I ask about any future plans and projects for the monitor? Is it heading around the borough? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So I'm not across the detail of that, and as people are aware, Councillor Rise is away enjoying a holiday. I don't know whether Mr. Stevens could comment in his absence. That would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you, Leader. I can give a brief answer and then provide a more detailed response after I've spoken to the officers, if they're all content with that. Yes, it will be moving around the borough. The focus will be predominantly around schools, so we can assess air quality within those schools, because clearly we know that young lungs are vulnerable lungs, and as a consequence, that will be our primary focus.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Stevens. Yes, Councillor Rowlands, please.
Yes, the present situation, just a question about the present situation in Southall Park Road is absolutely chaotic. I just wondered whether the council has been given any indication of the real traffic disorder that is there, long tailbacks at the roundabout at the bottom, which must form a traffic hazard. Has the county come back to us about initiating fairly major works all along that road and into the road where the leisure centre is? Have they come forward with any discussion about the disruption that these works are causing at the moment?
Thank you. Would you like to press your button, Councillor? Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. I think we're probably back to the same answer that Councillor Ashbury gave before, which is there isn't a great communication flow. We are raising issues of concern. I know you raised this probably about a week ago, 10 days ago, these roadworks, and I think most of us have probably been impacted by the ones that are at the corner here. So yeah, I'm afraid we'll have to add that to the list for Councillor Ashbury and keep pushing to try and get some kind of communication flow going. To be fair to Surrey County Council, I don't know whether it's that they're actually doing the works or whether it's a utility company, but either way, it obviously blights the residents and the businesses as well. So it's important we get some understanding as to what's going on, but also they communicate properly with us all. Yeah? Thanks, Councillor Rowlands. We are over time, however, in the spirit of goodwill and the new year, then please, Councillor Cope. I think you're the last one. Yeah, no, nothing on the TV screens. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to ask, because we've all received notification this afternoon that the planned briefing on the budget has been pushed back a couple of weeks. I was just wondering why there was a delay in that? And also, can he assure us that we will get sight of, enough of the budget to fully scrutinise it before we're asked to vote on it at full council?
Thanks, Councillor Cope. Councillor McIntyre, can you update members on that, please?
Yep. It's purely so that we have all the right data in the right way, in a way that makes sense and isn't subject to further change. So you will absolutely get a all members briefing as promised, as you would have had tomorrow, which I'm not 100% sure on the date, but I'm assuming the 6th of February. So 6th of February will be the new date. And that will be in exactly the same format as you would have had for tomorrow. So same information available.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor McIntyre. It's fair to say there was quite a period of sickness in the finance team in the run-up to Christmas, and that's just knocked us all out a little bit. And rather than waste members' time, made sure that we tried to take action on that. I think it gives an opportunity for that scrutiny that you may have done at performance and finance to be done around the executive meeting next time. As you know, it comes back here anyway. So happy to be flexible on all the questions and times around that, as you would expect. Okay, good. Let's move on to the draft local heritage asset list, also known as local list, item 6 on the agenda, which I think is with Councillor Ashbury to introduce.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Surrey Heath Borough Council, along with 5 other councils across Surrey, working in conjunction with Surrey County Council, has been working to update what is known as the local list, which is a list which comprises building structures, features and spaces that are locally significant and add to the cultural heritage and sense of place in the borough. Whilst this does not offer the same protection as Grade 1 or Grade 2 statutory listings, locally designated assets are afforded protection through the planning process. A consultation took place in autumn 2021, which resulted in the submission of over 70 nominations from the public for the project team to consider for the local listing. These have been reviewed alongside the existing local list, and a revised draft list has been produced, which is included in the papers for tonight. Consent is now being sought from the executive to consult on the local list. The consultation is narrower in scope than the one undertaken in 2021 and is not expected to be an opportunity to submit further nominations for addition to the list. Consultation will engage with those on the planning consultation database and other interested parties such as residents associations, conservation heritage groups, also the owners and occupiers of the sites identified will be conducted. Following consultation, officers will review any comments and make any necessary amendments. If there are any major changes, like the removal of any of the places from the list, that will come back to executive. If it is only minor, we're asking that the updating of this be delegated to the head of planning in consultation with the portfolio holder for transport and planning. Any questions?
Councillor White was in early doors, so Councillor White, please.
Thank you. On page 41 of the plan, page 41 of 256, you've got the old council chamber, number 63A, the High Street. The picture there is a rear view of the old council chamber. I was always under the impression that it was the actual front of the building that was locally listed and not the old council chamber, because I may be wrong in this, I hope I'm not, is that that's going to be demolished to make way for a new development behind 63A, the High Street. Can I have confirmation of that, please?
I don't have, obviously, on a document this size, individual information on individual sites. I will pass it over to Mr. Chinier, who may know more about that.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury, and thank you, Councillor White. You are correct. It should be the front of the building, and you are correct that we are looking to demolish the rear part of the site. And as you know, I think it was last year we took a application to Planning Committee where members granted for one dwelling at the rear of that site address. You are correct there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. There was Councillor Hode, please.
Thank you. I may not be the only councillor to have noticed that Lightwater Ward doesn't have a single item on that list, despite the several hundred pages. But we do have some items in Lightwater that are of value, I can assure you. I understand from Councillor Ashbury that new assets can't easily be added to the list at this point. I appreciate that that ship has largely sailed. But I would like to at least understand, if I can, what happened back in 2021 from a practical point of view with the consultation or the invitation for assets to be put forward, to understand why Lightwater seemingly missed the boat. Is it possible to get any information on how that consultation was carried out, who was invited to input, organisations, individuals, etc., so we can perhaps avoid something like this again in the future? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Hode. First of all, I'd just like to say that it is envisaged going forwards that this list will be updated every 5 years. And in the interim, if there is a building or a structure of clear heritage significance, there is no reason why it cannot be considered as an undesignated heritage asset in line with national planning policy. And can then be added when the list is then updated. In terms of your question on the consultation, the consultation was organised by Surrey County Council, and as I mentioned, it was across 6 boroughs of the county simultaneously. It was also publicised by ourselves. So in terms of the steps undertaken by Surrey Heath Borough Council, there were 6 Twitter posts, 4 Facebook posts attracting a number of comments and shares, 3 posts on Nextdoor social media. It was posted on the Surrey Heath consultation webpage and the local list webpage. Surrey Matters webpage, which is managed by Surrey County Council, also carried information on it, and a news article on both the Surrey Heath and the Surrey County Council websites. A number of local organisations, history groups and societies were also contacted individually, and an item was taken to the local plan working group in October 2021, setting out the approach being taken to the consultation and advising councillors that suggestions would be welcomed. So that was the consultation in 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury, and it's good to know that we're not a heritage desert in Lightwater. So we'll see if we can find some things to add to the list. Thank you, Councillor Hode. Councillor Wheeler, I think you had your hand up, yeah.
I did, thank you, Leader. Couple of points. I found the document, even though I'm very used to documents of this type, really quite difficult to navigate. So it is just the hope that before we go out to consultation, we can clean up and be consistent with the wording of Bagshot and Windlesham. At one point, we have Lightwater, Bagshot and Windlesham. And I would tentatively make the suggestion that the easiest way for residents to respond is to have the name of the village or the location. Please excuse me, I appreciate that it's not all about the villages in this case, but to have the name of the location and then the borough ward in brackets after it. Obviously, in my particular area, Windlesham is split across 2 different borough wards, and they are not consistently named throughout this document. The other thing that I found very helpful was the list of assets that were being removed. But what was lacking in this document is the reason for their removal. So I wondered if a little bit of clarity could be added there as to why assets are being removed from the list. And then the other thing, and I may have missed it, and if I have, I apologise, is we've got the list of assets being removed, but we don't have a list of the assets being added. So I wondered if that could clearly be identified as well, please. There is reference to a bridge there in Philpott Lane, which is said to date back to 1840. I happen to know, as I know the person that wrote off that bridge, that bridge was actually completely rebuilt about 28 years ago. So probably one that maybe we don't need to list anymore because it's a brand new bridge and not an old one. But if I could have a response, please, to my question about the wording of areas, the reason for removal and the list of those being added. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. This document has been structured by ward and there is no contents page, which is not very helpful. This is the structure that was provided by Surrey County Council. We will take that away and we will restructure by settlement to try to improve the readability of it as you suggested.
Thank you. There is actually confusion on the wording as well. So it's not consistent across Bagshot, Windlesham, Windlesham, Topham.
Yeah, we'll take that away before it goes out. The consultation will put that right. If there are, you talked about sites being removed. Obviously, they were compared against the criteria and felt that they were no longer satisfied the criteria or in some instances had been demolished. If there are structures that you believe should stay on the list and have historic significance, please can you submit that as part of the consultation going forward. And in terms of, I was just looking for it, I can't find it, you're correct. There is, from the numbering, a way of determining which are the sites being added, but it is not clear. I was aware of it, but clearly it hasn't made it through the document. So again, we can look at making sure those that have been added are marked as such.
Thank you.
Just a clarification, maybe I was asleep for a moment. In terms of taking items off the list, that is possible as part of the consultation, or is it similar to your answer to Councillor Hode, where you can't put things on or off?
If there is overwhelming... Sorry, I'll put the mic on. If there is overwhelming feedback from the consultation that a structure or a site should not be on the list, we will bring that back to executive if there is no such... so there is a method of doing it, but we don't want to do that through designated powers. That will come back to this group.
Thanks very much. So that would deal with Councillor Wheeler's comment about a bridge that was rebuilt 28 years ago, and you did mention it, and I did forget it. Thank you so much for correcting me. Okay, any more? Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you. I was listening intently there, and I was a little bit concerned. So based on what Councillor Ashbury just said, some items might have been removed because they've been demolished. But surely that defeats the whole object of having a heritage list in the first place. So can you just clarify that point?
Again, I was asked what are the reasons it could be taken off, and I gave that as a hypothetical. I haven't been through the full list of what is no longer on the local list, but that is one of the reasons in the national planning framework that says it could be removed.
So I go back to my question. If it's identified as a heritage site, how could it even be suggested it should be demolished?
Again, it would go through Planning Applications Committee if that were to be done, and it would go through the normal process.
Councillor Wheeler, is that a new hand or an old hand?
No, it's a new hand.
It's a new
it was
hand.
it was just really to reiterate my point that if we could put the reason why something is being removed, it would help. And for example, with the bridge, it was actually a car accident that damaged the bridge so completely that it wasn't able to be rebuilt. So there could be similar reasons as to why we've removed an asset or to those assets that we're removing. So I think it would be helpful to have the reason, because we must have it, otherwise we wouldn't have removed it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Councillor Wheeler. We'll take that on board when we revamp the document.
Okay, so I suggest we bring things to a conclusion on this item. I think everybody's had good opportunity to raise issues and points. So the executive and all the points obviously were taken on board, as Councillor Ashbury said. So the executive is advised to resolve that the draft list of local heritage assets, brackets local list, as set out in Annex 1, be approved for public consultation for a period of 6 weeks, and if there are no significant changes arising from the consultation, authority be delegated to Head of Planning in consultation with the portfolio holder for sustainable transport and planning to adopt the list of local heritage assets, brackets the local list. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, so we move on to item 7, revenue grants 2024-2025. I think that's with Councillor Lisa Finnan-Cook.
Thank you, Leader. Revenue grants provide discretionary funding from the Council to key third sector partners as identified within the body of the report before you. These partners use funding to deliver services to the most vulnerable within the borough, and as such, the revenue grants are key facilitators within the new council strategy to support the voluntary sector and deliver healthier and more inclusive communities to those in greatest need within the borough. It's recognised that as this is discretionary funding, given the pressure on the medium-term financial plan, this is a paper that invites executive examination relating to funding and the return on investment from third sector partners. This year, organisations who received revenue grants were required to make presentations demonstrating value for money to the External Partnerships Committee to ensure close levels of scrutiny, and we also required them to sign and then to meet a service level agreement. This year, we're going to deliver the funding over the course of the year on a quarterly basis as opposed to a full year up front, to ensure that ongoing funding is linked to successful completion of service level agreements and in particular reporting requirements. You'll note that the External Partnerships Scrutiny Committee made a number of recommendations within their report that's attached in the annex. These recommendations have been carefully considered, and when coming to the conclusions and recommendations within this report about the level of revenue grants awarded, which also takes into account our budgetary position and provides some transition arrangements for those organisations that we are no longer funding from revenue grants. I'd like to thank the External Partnerships Committee for their diligence, time, support and their contribution to this process, which is complex. I would ask the Executive to note that the Hope Hub funds have been ring-fenced since 2023. The Hope Hub provides support to those who are or may become homeless within the borough, and as such are some of the most vulnerable people supported by these grants. We also have recommended that funding to Citizens Advice is ring-fenced due to the support that they also give to vulnerable people, particularly during the cost of living crisis we've seen over the year. This is particularly important as the support from the Household Support Fund provided by the Government is ending in March 2024. I would ask the Executive to note how important it is that organisations such as those supported by revenue grants know at an early stage what funding the Council is prepared to give in order to support own financial management and planning. In terms of funding, historically this has been provided from reserves on an annual basis. Last year this was provided by government supplied COMF funding, that's a Containment Outbreak Management Fund. This year, to provide more transparency and certainty, it's included in the base budget, which will come to full council next month. Therefore, any executive resolution relating to these grants is subject to that decision. I'd ask the Executive to consider these recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from anybody? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. On page 280 onwards, the service level agreements that you mentioned, I was just wondering, why do some revenue grant holders have the clause, or the requirement rather, to acknowledge the support of the council in all publicity and others don't? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, for that question. It's an inconsistency that I had identified, and essentially it's a bit of a hangover from the past. It just simply hadn't been consistently applied within the SLAs. That will be rectified going forward, so every SLA that we pull together for this year will be included, and hopefully in years to come that will be consistently there. But while we're on the topic of the service level agreement, I think it is really crucial that we recognise that they need to be agile as well. So as things change within the community that the organisations are serving, perhaps with funding, if we're in a position where we have to decrease funding or optimistically increase, then the requirements within the service level agreements may change going forward.
Okay, thank you. Understood.
Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler, please.
Thank you. I'm obviously very disappointed that two of the more countryside based services haven't been supported and haven't got ongoing support, given when they seem to have achieved their targets more successfully than somewhere like the Camberley Job Club, which is getting a 30% increase in their grant funding. I am hoping that with the next level of SLAs, we are incorporating the equity policy, which does talk about making sure that we have good use of our green space and leisure facilities. So it seems to, in some respect, counteract where we've given grants, but I do appreciate that we are in a financially challenged position. So my question is assurance that we will be looking for equity. And also it's particularly specifically related to a number of these, I would hope that in future there would be a target that looks for inclusivity across the borough. So, for example, the Camberley Job Club, very difficult to access for members of my community, and don't particularly do much in terms of outreach work for our protected characteristics and environments such as our Gypsy, Traveller and Romany community. So I'm hoping those will be addressed with the SLAs moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. I take your point entirely. Equity, as you know, has been a strong feature of this administration's work over the last while. Absolutely happy to ensure that equity is a strong feature within the SLAs going forward, and we can support the organisations that we're working with in order to make sure that they are perhaps a little bit more accessible to people on your side.
Councillor Mears, I think you were next. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Point 2.2, I note that the paper recommends a reduction in the Ward Councillor Grant Funding Scheme. It's a scheme which supports many local organisations and events that do not have the resource to secure funding from the heavy hitter grant schemes. In my ward, the scheme supported projects such as the Young Community Library and the Alzheimer's Cafe. In another ward, a cross-party grant funded a defibrillator. You're an administration that campaigned to end top-down structures and promised to cut the red tape that gets in the way of community projects. And you report the residents told you that the council should be inclusive, transparent and listen. Information shared by Councillor Lisa Finan-Cook before Christmas shows that councillors have seen total requests of close to £20,000, all from deserving local organisations, and this is before the 12-month period even ended. And in the past few years, we've offered close to 250 grants as part of this scheme altogether. This data talks, so I'm asking you to please listen. My question is, can I count on this administration to support collaborative working to ensure that this important grant scheme remains in place as it stands today? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mears. Your ward and my ward are very similar. We have very similar issues. We have lots of really brilliant community initiatives and organisations delivering on the ground to the people who really need it most. I'm sure that you're using your grants wisely, as am I, and I do see what you're doing. And I just wanted to reassure you, really. As you know, this will come to the February Executive. We'll have a chance to talk about it further then and to really delve into it. But I want to assure you that I really value the councillor grant scheme. Whether it will be the same as it is, to be honest with you, that is unlikely. It does need to be reviewed because some wards just do not use them. But I'm not going to go into the detail, if you'll forgive me, of that this evening. We will talk further about it, but be assured that I value it.
Thank you, Councillor Mears. Yes, we'll look at that one in February. There's no intention to get rid of the scheme in any way, but we will look at the details of it next time. Councillor Garrett, were you just signposting previously, Councillor Mears, or did you have your own question? It was, okay, so very good. Why have a dog and bark yourself? Yeah, Councillor Mears. Okay, any other? He does. Oh, you did have one. I'm terribly sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you were literally just... Okay, please, Councillor Garrett.
He beat me to the question that I was going to ask, so I've got another one. Reference the voluntary support North Surrey. It's good to see that they've got 150 volunteers that have they found in the last 12 months. It would be really good, and I know that necessarily can't be done other than maybe to councillors, to get a list of those organisations that have been supported. And I know they found 150, but it would also be interesting to see the stats on the number that are sent to volunteer that don't get places as volunteers, if that's possible, because it's always something that I struggled to get when I was portfolio holder, so maybe you might have a little bit more luck than I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. They do really important work, and recruiting 150 volunteers is no mean feat. But I, like you, would like to see the information that you've requested. So I shall request that, and I look forward to bringing that back to you.
Okay. I have a couple of things that I'd like the executive to consider on this paper, having reflected on it. And it does link to the financial challenges of the council, but it also links more fundamentally to ensuring that these organisations get some kind of stability going forward. So I'd like the executive to consider that for A and B, their funding is secured for 4 years, subject to a force majeure clause, which I'm sure we can delegate the officers to come up with suitable wording in due course. For the organisations C to F, that their funding is confirmed for the next 2 years, again with the same force majeure clause, and that consistent with our and the previous administration as well, commitment to the Surrey Compact, I think it's called, that we inform the organisations E and D, or the particular programme at D, that their funding will be subject to financial review at the end of this year, so they get due notice. Additionally, under point 3, we have 2 organisations that we have previously written to. The previous administration has written to them last year, but we will need to highlight it to them that this is very much the end of the trail in terms of our ability to support these organisations, much as we value them. So we make sure that that piece of housekeeping is done. For any of the organisations listed there, we will continue to be open to providing non-financial support. I think that's consistent with our beliefs as an executive, and I think wider than just the executives, the council chamber as a whole and those online, that we will continue to look to support them with non-financial support, which, as you've seen in the documentation, is quite substantial, and we'll be open to considering that. But with the principle being that the same support levels for 4 years and 2 years are definitely guaranteed for those organisations I mentioned earlier. Additionally, I'd like to propose, I know there's quite a bit here, I apologise to all the members and the relevant portfolio holder. I'd also like to propose that the leader, which is myself, obviously, to write to the relevant cabinet members at Surrey County Council and Hampshire County Council about what their plans are to support some of these organisations in a sustainable way going forward, as it does seem to be an issue of concern, not just for ourselves, but I'm sure the other beneficiaries of these organisations in other boroughs, Hampshire County Council and Surrey County Council being the primary bodies that are responsible for the Blackwater Valley Countryside Partnership and the Basingstoke Canal Authority. So I think we can take that one on our shoulders. Conscious that was quite a lot to take in. Is there any questions from my colleagues in the executive around those proposals, or do I need to repeat any of them for clarity?
No.
I would like to be open to any questions from the wider members on those points I raised, and again, happy to clarify any of them if useful. Please, Councillor McIntyre.
Sorry, back to Councillor Wheeler's question earlier about going forward and having the opportunity to add other organisations that obviously support the wider borough more closely. Based on the fact that you're suggesting that we confirm these for a longer period, I'm assuming that's not going to prevent us from doing that bit of work and also looking to see who else we could add.
So I took note of Councillor Wheeler's comment, which I think was well aimed and very much in line with the item we'll be discussing shortly. I think in reality, with our financial position, which you would know better than most, Councillor McIntyre, I think our ability to take on additional organisations under the revenue grant scheme would be difficult. We do have some other funds, one-off funds potentially, which will be part of the review that will be brought back in February around wider grants, some sinking funds, simplistic term, sorry, but we do have some sinking funds, and that might give an opportunity for one-off funding. I think the second thing, which I think was, again, compliments to Councillor Wheeler on a point, is I think we should take the action to challenge these organisations about their outreach programme into other areas of the borough, even if it was as simple as once a month surgeries or something in relevant parish halls. It signifies that Surrey Heath, for example, is much wider than Camberley, and I think that was the fundamental point that Councillor Wheeler was making, as well as ensuring access to disadvantaged groups in those localities. So I think those are all good things that we can take on board, and I'd like to thank everybody for the contributions there. Is that okay, Councillor McIntyre? You want to come back on me?
No, I think it's just important that, notwithstanding the budget, because we are going to have to look at that over for future years anyway, that I think it's a good piece of work to do, to review and to challenge ourselves and see what else we can do, because we don't know what other funding, other specific funding we might be able to target to achieve that.
Okay, so if there aren't any other points or questions, what I'd like to propose is that the recommendation stands with the amendments I proposed, and that we delegate to the portfolio holder and the relevant officer, which is Ms. Kipping, to work up the detail of a supplementary wording. I don't think we need to bring it back here unless I'm giving counsel otherwise.
I think as long as everybody's clear, Chair, of what they're signing up to, you can get that agreement.
Fine. Okay, so I will just quickly whiz through that again then. So the executive is advised to resolve that the following revenue grants be awarded. Surrey Heath, Citizen Advice, 95,000, Hope Hub, 40,000, Voluntary Support North Surrey, 20,000, Voluntary Support North Surrey, Time to Talk Project, 7,000, Camberley Districts Job Club, 8,000, Surrey Heath Age Concern, 10,000. I'm proposing under item 2 that it is amended to say that organisation A and 1A and 1B, their funding is ring-fenced for 4 years, again, subject to a force majeure around the council finances. And organisations 1C, 1F is ring-fenced for 2 years, again, subject to the same force majeure clause. Under item 3, the following organisations be advised that revenue grant funding will not be awarded beyond the 24-25 financial year, and the funding provided this year is to form a transitionary payment to support the end of the revenue grant. Blackwater Valley Countryside Partnership 5,000, Basingstoke Canal Authority 5,000. Just to add that the organisations D and E also get similarly corresponded to, that their funding is only secure for this year at this point in time. And all grants, point 4, all grants to be subject to service level agreements. The other supplementary items are the leader's right to the relevant cabinet minister at Surrey County Council and Hampshire County Council concerning making some of these organisations sustainable, and all organisations listed will be open for consideration of non-financial support, non-revenue grant support. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you, and thank you for your support in that item. Okay, we move on to item 8, and I think Councillor Weaver managed to get ahead of us nicely already today on this one, so well done there. Achieving Equity Strategy 2024-27, back to yourself again.
Thank you, Leader. Achieving Equity Strategy. As part of the Annual Plan 2023, there was a requirement to refresh the Council's equality policy using the census data. This paper contains the refreshed strategy, which reviews the Council's legal obligations under the Equality Act 2010, as well as the Public Sector Equalities Duty. The strategy is a key enabler for the new Council strategy coming to Executive in February, and it seeks to go further than providing equality of opportunity by actively striving to achieve equity. This means that we proactively try to understand the barriers that people with protected characteristics experience, and where we can, work to remove them in relation to access of council services and as an employer of choice. It should therefore be noted by Executive that this strategy impacts on residents and also on officers working for the Council, as it applies to both groups. The strategy outlines the business case for doing so and makes the point that by removing barriers for people with protected characteristics, this makes services more accessible for everyone, so it helps all residents. It also makes the point that diverse groups of people are more effective in achieving outcomes that work for all, and suggests that targeting energy and effort at groups which are most in need is the preferred use of resources. The strategy recognises that to do this successfully, the Council must have clear and measurable objectives built around the local government framework, have a baseline assessment carried out this year to understand the current position so that improvement can be measured, have a clear action plan in place against which the Council can be held accountable, be evidence-based and data-driven, have the engagement of residents, which we'll achieve through the Achieving Equity Forum, which is made up of representatives of groups focused on the protected characteristics, have the engagement of officers across the Council, and be attached to training and continuous development and improvement principles. This was identified as a key priority for the Council during the Peer Challenge Review held in July, as well as in the 2023 staff survey. We know from the data presented to the Employment Committee in October that inclusion is an essential part of our attraction as an employer, as well as the right and fair thing to do for our residents. I would ask members of the Executive to debate this and ask any questions they would like.
Thank you. Any questions on this one? I think Councillor Garrett got ahead of you. Councillor Garrett, please. Yeah.
Thank you. It's a very simple one. Totally agree with the policy. It's a good policy. And the calendar of events. My only concern is that Easter isn't on the calendar. I'm guessing that is by error and not by design.
Correct. We'll add it.
Thank you.
Councillor Garrett, I also picked up on that myself. Everybody loves Christmas, but actually Easter is the main Christian festival. Councillor Omani, please.
We can't hear.
Is that better? Yeah. Hi. I've got a question about the gender pay gap, page 23 of 38. It's one question in 4 parts. Just wondering if you could answer or come back to me. First question is, why do we have a gender pay gap? What's the methodology behind it? How do those statistics get produced? How those statistics get produced when taking into account gender identification? And lastly, how are those parameters for measurement given? Is it a local policy? Is it a government policy? Or that's my questions.
Thank you, Councillor O'Mahony. Okay, so I'll take it in parts. It is a little bit complex in my mind anyway. So let me just take you through it. I'm pleased that you asked the question because it is one of the things that was a red flag to me when I read it. You might know that we are legally obliged to prepare gender pay gap figures, and we must do this using some guidance that the government gives us, and I can send you the link to the guidance that we follow so that you can see the detail of that. In very simple terms, we have a gender pay gap because the calculations done using that guidance indicate that the average pay for women in the council is lower than average pay for men. That's it in its simplest terms, but it's not the whole picture, and it shouldn't be confused with equal pay. Equal pay measures the pay awarded for jobs of equal value, and we have within the council, we have a job evaluation process to ensure that that jobs are fairly measured against set criteria. And we don't pay bonuses, so we've reduced the risk to equal pay within the council. It is likely that that the average pay for men is higher because we've got more men in more senior roles. And that is a fact. The next consideration then, which brings in another level of complexity, is why that is. It could be that that is purely by chance, or it could be that there's a more complex social reason for that. It could be noted that we don't have traditionally male roles within our employment, like waste operatives, for example. There's various factors that can flip that quite easily. We are legally obliged to consider what the data tells us in any 1 year and to publish an action plan. The report for this year is, I'm told, being currently worked on, and we'll be publishing that soon. And one of the other things that we're doing within the council is we are championing training for women in leadership roles. And there's also an informal women's network within the council too. In terms of your question around gender identity, the gender pay gap sees sex as binary, and it doesn't evaluate pay gaps between people who identify as trans or non-binary. So even though that approach might seem a very out-of-date approach, it is an out-of-date approach, but it is the way it is, and that is in line with the guidance that the government gives us in how we work it out. But in practice, for us, that would be a very minor difference in the figures that we have. So it wouldn't be hugely impactful in any case. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Phew. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wheeler, I think you've got your hand up.
I have, thank you. Just a couple of points. There's a spelling error on page 295. We have the American spelling of recognises. And then if we go on to page 305, sorry, let me just go through all my other documents. I am slightly confused.
Sorry, Councillor Wheeler, could you just repeat what page you said? Because you
295, it's recognises is spelt with a Z rather than an S.
Yeah.
And then with councillors and their role, not a sentiment I agree with, but a sentiment that in order not to have this rewritten, we possibly should consider. It says that councillors must pay due regard to equality and human rights in all ward work. Exactly, the document's in front of you, presumably. I would say that should pay. There are some political parties who are, by the very nature of what they suggest, derisive and unlikely to want to necessarily support, and may well be electioneering on those on that basis. So I think we should just bear that in mind for what it's worth. And then the other thing,
Councillor Wheeler, hang on, Councillor Wheeler, I'm really sorry. That was quite a complicated point you raised. If you don't mind, we'll just do one at a time there. And the second thing is we were struggling to hear you. So I think what you said was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you said was that it says in the document that councillors must take due regard to equalities and human rights, but there could be some parties who, by their nature, are not wishing to be as inclusive. Is that roughly what you said?
Essentially, yes. So by just changing the must to should, we would future-proof this document for any other.
Could we just pause there because it's a complicated point? Can we take some legal advice on that? Are we not required as councillors to act in line with human rights and equality legislation in a way? So therefore, by default, any councillor that wasn't doing it would be in breach of the law? Or could perhaps the monitoring officer or Ms Kipping could just clarify?
Yes, so thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak on this. My understanding is that councillors, as we all must apply the Equality Act legislation and the Human Rights Act as it stands at the moment. So I would say that they must comply with the law, and the public sector duty would apply to them as well. So and that requires the fostering of good relations between groups of protected characteristics. So even if there was a political, I think they must apply the law.
So could you, offline, because I don't think it's going to be productive, could we just reflect on the wording there to see whether we need to change the wording to address the legal aspects whilst also addressing, I guess, Councillor Wheeler, which she wasn't putting forward as her own position, by the way. I think she did say that somewhere amongst the words. So I hope that's a fair representation, Councillor Wheeler. That we give people also the free right of speech, which I think is consistent with our democracy. So good luck with juggling all of that. Councillor Wheeler, your second point. Sorry.
I was going to say that's also slightly poorly worded because it says matters to represent them, their views. And I'm assuming we don't mean sort of a colloquial them, their views. I think we just need to look a little bit at that. And then the next point raised was, again, and it's where the word must is within this box. We should use ward councillor grants to particularly support communities within their wards that may encounter barriers to opportunities and resources. So I know that I touched on that earlier, but with the cutting of councillor grants and cutting of ward councillor grants, it's how the administration is looking to balance that requirement and the potential changes in grants that are coming forward.
So just to clarify, obviously, as we said earlier, there's no decision around that yet made, and obviously the context of any changes in new scheme will be discussed and debated. So that's probably a point for next time. Could you just clarify what your specific question was to Councillor Feenan-Cook around the wording then?
Again, it's where the must appears. So in other words, we should always use ward councillor grants to be completely inclusive and to fund projects that are completely inclusive. But again, the wording, I just think the whole wording of the whole of that box possibly would benefit from another look.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. I have no problem with changing to should. So I'll ask Mrs. Kipping to action that. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, apologies for being a bit forceful on the mic, but it was just in the interest of good order. So thank you to both of you. Any more? Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you. If I could change the subject from English to mathematics, it's page 20 out of 38, where it says age. It says that the median age of employees was 57 years, 7 months, and then it says it again in brackets, but I think that must be a typo. It must be 47 years, 7 months. If you look at the next page, where it says age by gender, both of the median ages are 47 years, 7 months, so is that correct?
You are absolutely correct. We did identify that. It was a typical spreadsheet error, I'm afraid, but it will be amended.
Thanks.
I'm sure one of these days, Councillor Wilson, one's going to get past you by, but not today. Thank you for that. Any other? No. I think, listen, this is an extremely important policy that I know members will buy into, strategy members will buy into. On a personal note, just today I had somebody talk to me about their challenges with neurodiversity and the fact that they were suing their employer because their inability to make reasonable adjustments. So we certainly as a council don't want to be in that situation. We want everybody to feel valued and make the maximum contribution they can to the council and to the Surrey Heath community as a whole. So without further ado, we'll move on to the recommendation, if that's okay. Executive? Yeah, okay. So the Executive is advised to resolve that the Achieving Equity Strategy as set out at Annex A to this report be adopted by the Council, and that officers now proceed to undertake a baseline assessment and develop an action plan which will be included as part of the Council's annual plan for 2024-25. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Wheeler, for clarifying those couple of technical points. Okay, so we move on to item 9, which is the electricity generation from PV on Places Leisure, Camberley. Again, just to mention, the heavy lifting here has been done by Councillor Rise, who we've let off for good behaviour, to sunnier climes. Just to note that I think in the preparation of the papers, it hasn't made an exact separation between the public and the private part. So we'll try and make sure we break offline from the streaming at the right point. Just the page is in the wrong place. But without further ado, over to Councillor Ashby to introduce this one on behalf of Councillor Rice.
Thank you. So in 2019, this council declared a climate emergency and set a goal to be net zero by 2030. As part of that, a number of renewable energy projects across the council's estate are being investigated, and one such project is this one, which is the installation of photovoltaic panels at Places Leisure. Under the plan, which is in the paper, it is proposed that Surrey Heath Borough Council fund the installation of the panels and sell the energy generated to Places Leisure, which would generate an income for the council and also save 16.3 tonnes of our Scope 3 emissions, which are our procured emissions of CO2 in the first year. Initial discussions have taken place with Places Leisure, and they have indicated that they are supportive of this plan. And once this has been approved, further detailed negotiations with Places Leisure will take place to finalise the last of the details. So that is the background of the project. If there are any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Yeah, so just if we could note to stay away from the annexes, members, that's the key point, and then we'll read the spiel. But if we could take general points, that would be appreciated. I think Councillor Garrett might have got in first, but my eyesight is failing me sometimes. Please, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, and I won't refer to any annexes. My point is purely based on the quotation we've seen. I'm sure there might be information we're not seeing. As someone who has got solar panels, the one thing we know that we should have had done was put the fencing around the edge, and I know that some organisations do that as standard now, but I would seriously suggest that that's something you want unless you want an ingress of pigeons, because that is something that they love doing. So with that in mind, I know this obviously paper is relating to a particular figure, and it'd be of value to do that. It's just from experience something that maybe needs to be noted.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Garrett. I personally had the foresight to put the fencing around my solar panels on my house, again for the same reason. I'm almost certain that the project team has already considered it. If not, we'll make sure it gets added in for obvious reasons.
Councillor Wilson, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a big fan of solar panels as well, and I've got a pigeon farm underneath mine. My question is about, well, it's really about another possible risk. It's whether this installation will need DNO approval, because as we know, it can take a long time, and it might mean an upgrade to the local grid. Has that been considered? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. For those who don't know, the acronym DNO is Distribution Network Operator. They're the people who operate the grid. And approval from the operator is required for the vast majority of PV installations above a certain size. This process is generally led by the contractor and is conducted before the installation. From the discussions the Climate Change Officer has already had on this, it's felt that any risks or delay to the project are very low, and that is because the proposed system is very small relative to the actual energy usage on the site, and as such, it's not envisaged that we would be planning to export any energy to the grid. So there should be no need for an upgrade.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Wheeler, and then we'll come over to the side here. Councillor Wheeler, please.
Thank you. It was just to check the contract period for Places Leisure and the life expectancy of that building. Now, I appreciate it's a relatively new building, but they tend to have a habit of being changed and renewed fairly regularly. So what is the contract period for Places Leisure, and what is the life expectancy of that building, please?
Okay, sorry, we were just checking whether that should have been in the exempt part or in this part. It is in this part, and I will ask Ms McGovern to give us the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you and good evening, councillors. The contract left on the Leisure Centre is 22 years. So it's well above the life expectancy of the panels. The building itself is 40 years.
Please, Councillor Thorne, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. It's just a quick question with regards to, obviously, the purpose of this project is to try and reduce CO2 emissions and also carbon usage. I'm quite conscious that driving past the Leisure Centre, sometimes quite late at night, it's lit up like Blackpool Tower, even though the whole site is closed. Is there anything in place that stipulates it has to be all lights blaring, or is that something which can be potentially turned off to reduce carbon emissions as well?
I thank you for the question. Obviously, I am presenting on behalf of Councillor Rice, so I'm unsure of that. I will ask Mr Stevens if he knows off the top of his head an answer to that. If not, we'll have to get back to you.
I can provide a very brief answer and then skillfully pass the question to Sue McCubbin, if that's all right, who is eager to answer this one. As I understand it within the contract, they do have an obligation to manage their energy consumption effectively, but clearly there's a balance between that and the commercial attractiveness of the centre, given its prominence on the A30. Sue, was there anything else you wanted to add?
I was just going to echo you, boss. No, absolutely right. The lights on the A30, they've specifically requested that that is lit even when the centre is closed, but it is minimal lighting as much as it looks like it is, and it is energy efficient lighting. So it is kept to a minimum, but it is for the purposes of marketing and placemaking.
I'm sure Councillor Thorne that Places will be happy with the analogy and they will use it in their publicity shortly. Is there any other questions in this part of the meeting? I have a suspicion I had one, but I can't find it. Just 1 second, sorry. Yeah, maybe just a clarification. And please, whoever wants to pick it up. Under point 1.5, it mentions the energy contract or the clause in relation to as part of the contract with Places Leisure. Could you just confirm that the details of that clause, which I do not wish to know or understand, don't carry any risk for us in going forward with this investment proposal? And I think it's been proposed to Ms. McCubbin.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button there for a moment. It all went hazy on me. I'm actually going to have to come back to you on that. So please bear with me just a minute and I will come back to you.
No problem. What we can do, if we move on and you need to dig something out, is we can take it under the exempt section. That's also fine. Anything in this section from anybody? No, good. Okay, in that case, we'll jump to the spiel. What is the technical term for the spiel?
Leader,
Yeah.
you could ask members if they have any questions that relate to the exempt annex. If they
Okay.
don't have any,
No, fair enough.
you can just go straight to the recommendations.
Thank you. That's probably why it was done as it was done. Yeah, okay. Anybody got any questions that relate to the exempt section, the annex? No. Well, they've saved some time there. Ms. McCubbin, do you want to come back on whether there's a risk around that clause? Because it looks like it's a cap and collar or something.
There is no risk around that clause. This is the energy benchmarking clause, which is something that is a standard clause within a leisure operator's contract, where, if you like, they take the risk on price and we take the other way around. We take the risk on consumption, they take the risk on price, or vice versa. But essentially what it is due to the energy prices increase, it means that we essentially support the business because of that. This project sits completely outside of that energy benchmarking clause, but it was worth mentioning this benchmarking clause, but it is typical of a leisure services contract, which is something that we are, if you like, contractually obliged to comply with. But for the purposes of this, this will be removed from that clause. So there is no risk to, if you like, any change to this clause or it cost us any difference than that clause originates as, if you like, as part of the original contract. I don't know if I explained that very well. Apologies if I didn't.
No, that's very clear. Thank you. No, very clear and helpful. And it may just be the wording spooked me. So thank you for the clarification. Okay, so Executive, let's move on. A very exciting opportunity, part of our pathway to net zero. We're very much hopeful there'll be a flood of these coming through, if that's the right phrase. Anyway, because every day then we'll have a silver lining. If we look to resolve, the Executive is asked to resolve that the installation of solar photovoltaic panels at Places Leisure Camberley be agreed, and that the delivery of the project, including minor changes to the project plan or expenditure within the agreed budget, be delegated to the Strategic Director for Environment and Community in consultation with the portfolio holder for Net Zero Wellbeing and Environment and the Strategic Director for Finance and Customer Service. The Executive is advised to recommend to full Council that a budget not exceeding the amount stated in the exempt Annex A to the agenda report be agreed for the installation of solar photovoltaic panels at Places Leisure Camberley. Are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much, members. Thank you very much to anybody listening online. Meeting is now closed.